Alright, here is how you solve this problem. So you have y equals x squared multiplied by the square root of 4x minus 3, and you want to find the derivative. So since you have two x's and you can't combine them because this is under a radical and this is not in a radical, right? And you can't really get that out of the radical. You have to do a product rule. So the product rule for derivatives is basically, so let's say, this is hard to do while holding a camera. If you have y equals to f of x times g of x, right? So all this is saying is that there's a function of x here and there's another function of x here. So that's the same thing as this would be f of x. This is another function and we'll name it g of x, right? The derivative of this is equal to, it doesn't matter the order of this because it's addition and multiplication, but it's f prime of x multiplied by g of x plus f of x times g prime of x. And that's it. So basically what you're doing is you're taking the derivative of f of x multiplied by just g of x, and then you're adding just f of x and multiplied by the derivative of g of x. So in this situation, we're setting f of x is equal to x squared, and g of x will be equal to the square root of 4x minus 3. Now, you can't really work with the square root of 4x minus 3, but we can rewrite it to say y is actually the same thing as x squared multiplied by 4x minus 3 to the 1/2. Because when you're taking the square root of something, it's actually the same thing as saying to the power of 1/2. Just like if it was the cubed root, like if there was a 3 right there inside of the little divot of the radical, that would be to the 1/3. So you can rewrite it to have a power, an exponent, instead of saying square root. Okay, so now you have that. Now we're going to take y prime, the derivative of this. So first thing we're going to do, what is the equation? F prime of x times g of x. So f prime of x, I'm sure you probably know the power rule. So the derivative of this is very simple. Power rule is this, right? When you're taking the derivative of x to the n, that's not really clear, to the n, it's this, the derivative of that is equal to n multiplied by x to the n minus 1. So in this situation, the derivative of x squared is just 2x, because you're minusing 1 in the exponent, so that's just 1, so you don't have to write 1 in the exponent, and then you pull the 2 out and multiply it. So now it's a coefficient. So it's 2x, and then you multiply that by just g of x. And I'm going to write g of x not in the radical form right now. Actually, no, I'm going to write it in the radical form. But we need it not in the radical form when we take the derivative. So I'm going to do multiply by that, right? So that's the first part of the equation. Now we do this, the second half. Plus f of x, which we know is x squared, multiplied by g prime of x. G prime of x. So the derivative is the same thing as taking the derivative of 4x minus 3 to the 1/2. Now when you take this derivative, it's going to be a chain rule. So the chain rule, you have multiple things going on here. The first thing though is you need to focus on the exponent because that's on the outside. So how I learned is that you put this in a box, right? This part is in a box because the 1/2 is what you need to focus on first because it's the exponent. And so you're going to do the power rule. You pull out the 1/2 and you say 1/2 4x times 4x minus 3. And remember, with the power rule, you have to subtract this by 1 in the exponent. So this is now going to be negative 1/2. We're basically saying negative 1/2 is the same as, it's the same as 1 over the radical of 4x minus 3. Because the negative exponent means that it's in the denominator. Okay? So now you have this. This is the derivative. Oh, no, sorry. Chain rule. I forgot. So once you do that, now you need to take the derivative of what's inside the box and multiply it to this. So you take the derivative of 4x minus 3. Very simple. The derivative would just be 4. So you just have a 4 on the outside and multiply that. So that's going to simplify to 2. Just 2. Because 4 over 2 is equal to 2. Okay, so that's g prime of x right there. So we're going to plug that in up here, saying multiplied by 2 4x minus 3 to the negative 1/2. And then we're going to simplify this. So I'm going to write it out over here. So we still have, the left side is, I'm going to write the same. 2x multiplied by the radical 4x minus 3. This side we're going to simplify a little bit, say it's now 2x squared. Remember, this is the same thing as 1 over the square root of 4x minus 3. So, and it's all multiplied. So we're going to say 2x over the square root of 4x minus 3. Okay, and honestly, I think this is an acceptable answer because it's equivalent to the actual answer. You can simplify this. It depends, I feel like, with what your professor wants you to do, but this is acceptable for most everyone. But what you can do to simplify this is make common denominators, which is basically just all you have to do is make this term have the same denominator as this. So what you have to do in order to do that is just multiply this by the denominator. So you'd say basically it's just 2x 4x minus 3 multiplied by the radical 4x minus 3 over radical 4x minus 3 plus 2x squared over 4x minus 3. Okay, so now they have common denominators. All I did was in order to do that, you multiply the top and the bottom by this denominator. Now that you did that, this actually simplifies nice because this is the same radical squared. Now, when you have that, this actually just gets rid of the square root, and it just becomes 4x minus 3. So now you have 2x multiplied by 4x minus 3 plus a 2x squared. And this is all over the common denominator, 4x minus 3. And then after that, you just multiply it out. You get 8x squared minus 6x plus 2x squared over, all I did there was distribute. And then final answer, you combine like terms. 10x squared minus 6x over the square root of 4x minus 3 is your final, most simplest answer. Okay. And that's pretty much it.